Reverend Faith Fowler is both the pastor of Cass Community United Methodist Church and the executive director of Cass Community Social Services, a nonprofit agency in Detroit, Michigan that provides food, housing, medical, mental health, and employment programs for people living in areas of concentrated poverty. She is the author of This Far by Faith, 20 Years at Cass Community, and Tiny Homes in a Big City.
So this is the model of the very first house we built. The original plan was to construct 25 houses on 25 lots. The lots being 30 by 100 square feet, which fits in with the rest of the neighborhood. We didn't want something that would stand out other than the fact that they're smaller. Each of the houses we decided originally would be between 250 and 400 square feet. This one is just about 300 square feet. You can see it's attractive. It was that way on purpose, that far too often when we think of affordable housing, it's ugly. It's identical. It's nondescript. It's not something that inspires people to want to live there or to claim that they live there. And so we very intentionally picked a different design plan for every single house and tried, at least from the get-go, to have them have some features that would make it stand out and attractive. This obviously is a Tudor. Go ahead for the next slide. Now you can see the land in which we're building. It's on the northern edge of our campus. We already have about a dozen buildings within 5 blocks. I lied, I'm stepping in front of you. We're building in all this vacant space. So occasionally people say to me, Reverend Fowler, why aren't you rehabbing in the city of Detroit that has 80,000 vacant structures? Well, you should know that of the dozen structures we have besides tiny homes, we've rehabbed every single one of them. Some of them as large as 90,000 square feet. So we're not opposed to rehabbing, saving buildings when they can be saved. But often, at least in Detroit, and I don't know if that's true about Rock Island Township, we have a lot of vacant land, all of which could become home to somebody looking for a house. Very good. I'm glad you're joining us. Okay, so here is the campus, and it's grown a little bit since then, but our administrative buildings, some permanent supportive housing, a nice outside park, a gym and a warehouse, and the idea is, and I know you know Detroit's called the Motor City, but if you're poor, you're not getting anywhere. You have to rely on the bus system that doesn't go after a certain hour at night, it doesn't go on the weekend, sometimes it's not reliable if you're trying to get to work. So the notion was, if we could build our tiny homes in proximity to the rest of our campus, if you will, then people could walk. People could walk if they ran out of food to get more food. They could walk to a gym. They could walk to a counselor. They could walk to a job. They could walk to just about anything they needed. So it didn't matter if they had a car, and it didn't matter if they relied on the bus system. It became a pedestrian community, which is really important if you're poor. In a city like Detroit, where if you can afford a car, you can't afford the insurance, much less the maintenance, and that kind of thing. So the notion was they're a part of our existing campus, causing it to function for them with anything we already have. And you'll hear later that we're adding to it. Okay. So you may have heard that other organizations have used tiny homes, especially with homeless people, homeless veterans, homeless mentally ill. The background of that story is pretty simple, that tiny homes were seen as an alternative to shelters. In other words, you had homeless people who didn't want to go into the shelters, who had been put out of the shelters for whatever reason. They wouldn't access, the 60, 90, 120-day care that was available, usually with government funding. In those situations, they call it a tiny house village. And they use the model from the old tent cities, where you have an outlier of homes, and then in the middle you have community services. So Many of them are just tiny bedrooms, really. Some of them even without electricity, certainly without plumbing, and you go to then a common building to shower, to wash, to eat. In some cases, you go to a community building for warmth, right? I wasn't interested in that. Cass already runs 3 different shelters, and although I don't plan on stopping to run them, I know they're not ideal, and they're not the solution for people who've been homeless long term. So next slide. This, by the way, is Olympia, Washington, Coyote Village. It was the first project to use government money. And so the construction of their homes is very good. They're different colors, but otherwise they're identical. They use the, go back for a second. The other thing about tiny home villages or tiny house villages is they're usually not in the city. You can see this one's right next to a factory. Some of them are next to prisons. It means that folks from this very good place have to go 45 minutes into the city for services and 45 minutes back every time they want to get help. Okay, so anyway, ours is different. Ours is a program we call Rent Then Own. It is meant for people who have an income, so we're not just taking homeless people off the streets and putting them into houses. You have to have an income. Now, what the income is varies. It could be SSI disability. It could be you have a part-time job. It could be you have a minimum wage job. It really doesn't matter where the money comes from, but you have to make at least $7,000 a year. Any idea why? I mean, why do we pick that $7,000 a year? No. So we don't want to take more than 1/3 of their income for rent. And the smallest house we build is 250 square feet. So if they make $7,000 a year, about 1/3 of their income is $250. We know you're still going to need money to live on. That's actually a HUD rule, although there's no HUD money in this program. It's a good rule, so we adopted it. So it also goes low enough that if you are on SSI, you could qualify, right? They pay for 7 years $1 a square foot in our program. So if they live in the smallest house at 250 square feet, they pay $250 a month. Their only other bill is electric, although the whole house is electric. I'll get into that later, but we raise the money to build the houses up front. Doesn't mean you have to do it that way. It's the way we set it up. So before a shovel goes in the ground, I have to raise enough money to complete the project. So then why do we charge them rent? Well, we want to make sure they can pay their bills. So for 7 years, we use their rent to pay their property taxes, their insurance, their water bill, and their security system. If after 7 years they've participated in the program and paid their rent on time, we give them the house, we give them their bills. We know they can pay them because that's what we use to pay them all the time. Next. So, here's the deal. In addition to paying their rent, which by the way is low even for Detroit, $250 a month, they have to agree to several other things to participate in the program to get the home at the 7-year mark. They have to participate in financial coaching so that everybody has their own coach. You meet privately. Nobody needs to know your financial business. So the coach will do things like ask, do you have a budget? Do you have a bank account? Do you have debt? Do you have, all those things, and help them set it up if they need it. And then, can you earn more money? Why would we ask such a stupid question? Well, if you come from affordable housing and you earn more money, your rent goes up. And if you come from affordable housing and you earn too much more money, you have to get out. That's not the way we're set up. We're set up, if you earn more money, you keep it because your rent is based on your square footage, which hasn't increased, right? When you pay rent, when I paid rent, my rent never went up when I got a raise at work, nor does theirs. We want them to earn more money. Just because you move in poor doesn't mean you have to stay poor for the rest of your life. Actually, we're hoping that you don't stay poor. We'd love you to earn more money. We help you think through how you could earn a few bucks without getting a 40-hour-a-week job. Can you do nails? Can you do hair? Can you walk a dog? Can you babysit? Can you wash a car? It doesn't have to be a traditional job. But even if you earn an extra, $50 a month, and you're living on $7 grand a year, that's like hitting the lottery. And you do with it what you please, it's your money. But once you start earning extra cash, then the coach comes back and says to you a few months later, now that you have more money, have you ever had money make money for you? And of course they haven't. And so then they explore, how about a stock? How about a bond? How about anything that's going to earn interest so that you see the magic of compounding eventually? And so by the time you own the house in 7 years, you have a safety net, right? Because eventually your refrigerator's going to die, or your roof's going to have a hole. And once you own the house, it's yours to fix. And we want you to have the money set aside to do that. So they have to meet with a financial coach every month privately. Together, they meet once a month in a homeowners group. And it's a give and take kind of place where we talk about maintenance things. If they've never owned a house before, you don't know when to turn off your outside spigots. You don't know when to clean your gutters. You don't know when that chain fails on your toilet. You can hold it together with a paper clip. You don't have to call a plumber at $75 an hour. You don't know that because you've never had to deal with it before. But in 7 years, it'll be yours, and so we want to make sure you know how. The last thing they have to do as part of our program is they have to volunteer. Habitat, which is a great organization. I never have any bad things to say about Habitat. I really like them. But ours is set up different. With Habitat, you volunteer, you do sweat equity in building a house. Well, I've never lived in a house I've built. I don't ever want to live in a house I've built. I'm not really good with tools, right? So what we do is we ask them to give 8 hours a month for the 7 years to community development. So will you come with us and help do a cleanup day, a board up day, landscaping day? Will you help us host the community trick-or-treating or Christmas giveaway? Will you do things that will make for a better neighborhood? Will you sit with the community and watch people? All that good stuff. So that not only are their houses seen as an asset, but the people are seen as an asset. And let me go to the next one, tell you a little bit about the people. Vince mentioned, hi there, come on in, that these houses are for formerly homeless men and women, which is true. But for us, it's not limited to that. We early on decided that we would have a mixture of people for a couple of reasons. We didn't want folks driving by and saying, see, that's where the homeless live, first of all. Second of all, most people are drawn to a city because of its diversity, its variety of people. And we thought if we had everybody with the same experience, it wouldn't be as good. And so we've mixed it up with formerly homeless individuals, formerly incarcerated men and women, senior citizens, and young adults who have aged out of foster care. We've had hundreds of requests from people who don't fit into those categories asking if they could just buy a home or rent a home. No, you can't. We put out applications in 2016, and the first month we received over 120, and the next 6 months we received 1,000. So the demand for these houses is off the charts. But the concept of having a mixed community has been really, really good. I would say that we have 20 houses and one is occupied by a Caucasian. Detroit's a primarily African-American city, so we wanted that balance to remain. But in terms of age and education and experience and working and non-working, it truly is a good mix. And we've seen them rely on each other, almost like family, or community back in the day when we sat on the front porch and not the back deck. They look out for each other in a wonderful way. This man spent 40 years in prison and came out, and the whole world had changed. So he really needed help figuring out how to get on a computer, right? Among other things. And he's just been loved into our community. Next. So, while the renters, if they have been homeless, it changes right away. Maybe you haven't been in a shelter ever as a resident or a volunteer or recently, but I already told you we do shelters and we'll keep doing shelters, but they're not perfect. In a shelter, you lose all control. You don't decide when the lights are on or off. You don't decide if it's too hot or too cold in the room. You don't get to choose when you get to smoke, when you get to shower, when you get to eat, what you get to eat, whether or not you have company. You don't decide what you watch on TV, whether or not you have sex with your spouse. Just all of that is decided for you, and it has to be in a community space where you have 50 or 100 people to keep folks safe, but it's not, it's cruel. So all of that, day one when you get your keys, changes. You decide lights on or off, heat up or down, whether or not you have company for dinner, whether or not you have a romantic evening with your significant other, whether or not you have people for dinner to celebrate a birthday or Christmas, whether or not you have a cat or a dog, although I hate cats, so we don't have any cats so far, just dogs. And it's wonderful to see the reaction of autonomy. Yes, community, but also privacy and dignity. Next. So, how do we build these houses? We use a general contractor who uses the architectural plans we've either drawn from him, for him or purchased for him. He then hires the trades to do everything that requires a permit. So run in the utilities, lay the foundation, do the walls, the roof, the windows, plumbing, electrical, all done according to code, universal code. We want them to be safe. Then we can handle with, next, volunteers. We can handle everything else with volunteers, which helps us spread the story and cut the cost. So drywall, flooring, painting, sometimes insulation, installing cabinets, countertops. They can do a lot of the work. All of the landscaping is done by volunteer teams. Sometimes religious groups, corporate groups, individual volunteers, sororities. I mean, we take all comers. They help us raise awareness to what we're doing and get the job done. It extends how long it takes to build it, but I think it's worth it in the long run. Next. So they also bring with them networking opportunities. I always take a quiz here. Do you like the Victorian better on the left or the recycle house on the right? Raise your hand for Victorian. Okay, historic people, and then the recycle house. Some of you don't like either house. Okay, so here's the story on the Victorian. That actually was a picture I saw online, and I loved it so much because at the time I was living in a Victorian house. And I said to our program manager, find me the blueprints. And she looked and looked and looked and couldn't find them anywhere. There were none. It was just a picture. And so I went to an architect I met at a Rotary meeting who had said to me, if you ever need any help, this is the wrong thing to say to me. I said, okay, draw me this house. And he did. I mean, we got plans for free. And then not only did we get plans for free, he said, if you want to sell them to others, you can. So we've run into that a few times, which is a wonderful thing. The one on the right is Barnwood. And as the story has gone out through volunteers and others, we've had people, especially people in rural areas, who have said, how can we help? And this one family was ripping down a barn. I said, oh, I want that wood. And it saved us a ton of money and gave us a rather unique, attractive house, I think. Next. The other thing is that occasionally I show this PowerPoint or go talk to a group, and I remember the very first parlor meeting we were doing involved a wealthy suburb, a house of one of our board members, and then when I was done, an older woman raised her hand and said that she, her husband, her family were tearing down their kitchen. She said, "Could you use our old granite countertops?" I thought, hell, I don't have granite countertops. But since then, we've gotten so much granite from people that almost every house has granite countertops. So it means you can get a good quality material for no cost. You have to recut them, right, to fit. But other than that, we've gotten metal roofs and pavers and paint. If you have extra paint after a project, you've probably got enough to paint a tiny home. They're not very big. Cabinets, just all kinds of materials have been donated to this project. Next. So, again, people watch HGTV and they say, well, I thought all tiny homes were on wheels. Well, they're not. And they don't make sense for our population for a couple of reasons. One is, if you gave a tiny house to somebody who is poor, how are they going to pull that tiny house? They don't own a car or a truck. And where are they going to pull it to? They don't own any property. If they own property, they probably wouldn't be coming to us for a tiny home. The second thing is, I'm from Detroit. I know anytime you pull something on wheels off the lot, it's worth less money the minute you hit the street. That it depreciates just like that. And we were looking for housing that would appreciate, that would be worth more money over time. So our houses are on foundations. The problem in Detroit is that back in the day, in the 70s and 80s, when they were ripping down all the houses, or lots of houses, they just buried them in the basement. So now when you dig in the ground, it's very expensive. You're not going to put a basement under these things. I frequently joke that we'll tell people Jimmy Hoff is buried out there somewhere, and folks would come all dig it up for us, but I want to respect the Hoff family. So they're all on slab on grade. You could do them on stilts. I don't like it as much. We're in a city environment. I don't want critters coming up underneath the house, right? Next. Every house has either a good-sized front porch or back deck to increase their living space. Michigan, like Illinois, has 3 good seasons: spring, summer, fall. Winter's not as good for being outside, but at least you can enjoy those 3 seasons. Next. So, what comes in a tiny home? Every house comes with stove, refrigerator, microwave, washer, dryer combo, a heater cooling unit called a P-TEC unit, hot water on demand. I should point out that the P-TEC and the hot water on demand are not only good for the environment, they're good for floor space. You know, your hot water tank takes up floor space, your furnace takes up floor space. Neither of these do. They come with beds, tables, sofas, chairs, lamps, dishes, pots, pans, towels, trash cans, rugs. I mean, just everything, unless you don't want it. If you don't want it, we take it out. If you do want it, there's no cost. If you want some and don't want some, we don't care. Usually, we have a tiny home tour when a set of 6 or 7 are done. So we invite in local interior decorators so they coordinate the sofas and the wall color and all the, I don't know that stuff. But for the tour, they look like something on HGTV. So the furniture they would accept is good color-coordinated furniture, and almost everybody has kept some of it, and many people have kept all of it. This, by the way, is a loft. There's a nice-sized bedroom upstairs. There are 3 ways they come. They come in studio, where everything's in one room except the bathroom. They come 1 bedroom, which is on the first floor, and then they come lofts. And of course, the younger people are better suited for lofts because the older we get, the less we like stairs. Next. Oh, that's a bad one. Landscaping. They do their own flowers, and I wish they showed more of the flowers than me, but anyway, go ahead, next. Every house comes with a security system. We debated at first whether we should do bars on the windows and doors like many people do in Detroit, or whether we should do a gated community like some people do in Detroit, or whether we should do security system. We finally decided on the security system so that the people and their things would be protected no matter what. But the thing is, we put it out to bid, which is how you should do anytime you're using somebody else's money. And we got back a bid that was way too low, and I knew that. I live in Detroit and had a security system. I knew what it should have run. And I asked our manager to contact this guy and find out why. Was he going to raise it in a year? Was he going to raise it in 7 years when they were stuck paying the bill? I didn't want to be swindled like that. And he wrote back an email I will never forget. He wrote, this isn't verbatim, but it's close enough. Dear Stacy, 20 years ago I was a drug addict. And somebody helped me. And now it's my turn to help somebody else. So a couple things. One is this project has been like a fundraising, that people have come out of nowhere to help us do this. Because almost everybody understands what it means to own a home, right? Two is don't ever give up on a drug addict. That when he or she is able to stop using, it'll be a great day, but it'll be a good day for humanity because they always remember and they reach back and they help out. And sometimes we want to quit before they can quit, and we shouldn't. I got a phone call one day talking about people helping us out, and this lady called. She says, hey, Reverend Fowler. I said, yes. She says, I'm calling from Bon Jovi's office. Do you know who Bon Jovi is? I said, I'm a minister. I'm not dead. She says, well, he's seen your video online and he'd like to help you. Will you fill out a grant application? Sure. So I sent it in and he sent $100,000. I had to go buy a Bon Jovi CD to see what he sang. But that's what I mean, people that you don't even know. Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, sorority. We had a church youth group raise 40 grand for this. Corporate groups. Small family foundations, little old ladies who have walked in and written checks for $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. It's been incredible, humbling. Next. So we started, I was just reminded today is the 4th anniversary of the press conference of the first home we opened. So we had one house in 2016. And then we began doing 6 at a time. So 2017 we had 7, 2018. You know, we had 6 more. We're now up to 20 with 7 started. These 7 will be for people with a disability as well as the other categories we outlined because the houses need some special modifications to handle wheelchairs and or visually impaired or deaf, and we're doing that again to keep the diversity going. We're also starting, how do you like the lighthouse on the bottom there? Is that pretty cool? The bottom floor is a garage. And the top floor is your living space. And it's seen right off the lodge where people drive by and get off the freeway to see what else is up there. But we're starting a commercial strip right along the tiny homes area that we're calling the Green Mile, ambitiously, that will have shops and stores and light manufacturing to provide jobs in our area that tie in with the sustainability link. So the very first one that's being started right now is a 1-cup car wash. When you go to a normal car wash, you know how many gallons of water you use on your car? 133 gallons of fresh water. When you come into our car wash, you're going to use less than this cup of Diet Coke because we've got a way to convert it into steam. But the whole building is off-grid. So we're, again, tying in with the sustainability and ultimately providing services and amenities, but more importantly, jobs within our walkable neighborhood. So we've got planned out the first 3 blocks, and then we'll go from there. And we're working together with other church groups, a mosque, a theater, so it'll stretch a whole mile by the time we're done. Next. So it's gone virtual online a couple of times. The very first time we didn't know anything about it. Now this put up a video. So the swiping, actually, some of our press conference material and some of the stuff from the local news media. They put together a video and ran it with lots of errors in it, which caused many, many people to criticize what we were doing, which really wasn't what we were doing. but it hit 13 million views, and it just blew me away. The next year we had one, actually two, that have put us over 90 million. And what does that mean? That means people have come from all over the world. The mayor of Paris was there last year. Nuns on a Bus, the NAACP, Detroit Homecoming. I mean, just anytime anybody comes to Detroit, they stop by. I ended up on a security shift the other night. They were shooting selfies in front of the tiny homes at 5 o'clock in the morning. I said, really? Can you come back in the daylight? People are trying to sleep, you know. But so there have been good and bad things because of it. I'm sure that's how Bon Jovi found out about us. Next. So we wrote a book, as was mentioned, that has been doing fairly well as people are trying to figure out whether it will work in their community. Next. This just gives you an idea in terms of what's the difference between a traditional house in the United States and a tiny home in terms of the environmental impact, both as you're building the house and as you're operating the house. As I mentioned to a reporter before we started, you know, tiny houses are not new. We had tiny houses in the United States, unfortunately some of them for slave quarters, but some of them for colonialists. From the get-go, and what's happened over time is our families have gotten smaller and our houses have gotten larger, right? So we have houses that are way too big for what we need and aren't doing good things for the planet. These houses are built to do good things for both the people and the planet. Next. So, because everything's electric, the first year was a little bit of a shocker as to what happened to their electric bill. So we decided to go ahead and install solar arrays at each house. Before that, we had decided to do solar generators. We do it through our Green Industries Job Program. We were doing solar. And that was good. Actually, we started building solar arrays when Maria hit Puerto Rico. And I said, this is bad. They were talking at that time that the people of Puerto Rico would be without electricity for 3 months. And all I could think about is, what do you do if you have diabetes and you can't hold insulin for 3 months? So I put a picture on my Facebook page of the little generator we could make. A simple generator is enough to charge your phone and your computer, run a fan, a light, your TV set for a good 8 hours, especially in Puerto Rico where you have lots of sun. And I put a picture up thinking we could send them, I don't know, a dozen. But people were so generous, we had enough to take over 50, and we literally had to take them because stuff was sitting out in the water for months at a time. So we took them and set it up, and it was something. We took one of the men who works in Green Industries, who has been homeless with us, and we're standing in the airport in Detroit, and I said to him, you know, Mark, and he's middle-aged, he's like 50, tall, smart, sensitive, just a wonderful human being. And I said to him, have you ever been on a plane before? And he said, no. Okay, this is going to be an interesting trip. So we got on, we couldn't sit together. And I'm sorry, I said it. It's been a long time since I've spoken. Have you ever been to an island before? That's what it was. And he said no. And then we got on the plane, we're separated, we landed in Atlanta, and he comes running up to me in Atlanta, and he says, now this won't make any sense to you, but that he had been to Belle Isle, which is a park, and Boblo, which is a park, is his examples of an island. I thought, okay, how limited. Some people never get to come to Illinois, right? So we fly to Puerto Rico, and we land, and we rent a vehicle, and we load all the crap into the vehicle, and we drive to the hotel, and it's sitting in the pitch darkness. I mean, we knew there would be no electricity there, and our stuff wasn't charged up that we could even have lights. What I didn't think about, even though I had a good education, is that we're on the 3rd floor and the elevator didn't work. So now we're having to carry all this stuff up 3 flights in the dark with our smartphones as flashlights on our foreheads, right? And we get into the living room and we're exhausted and just sitting there together with candlelight, and I said, you know, Mark, have you ever seen the ocean before? And he said, no, Reverend Fowler. So we went the next morning before we started installing solar to the ocean. And this middle-aged man, he just stood there and wept. And I thought to myself, so many things aren't right. So we decided right then and there that every year we'd go somewhere else and we'd take solar, and that we'd take, as a part of the team, people who don't ever get to go. That they could be the heroes, the rescuers, if you will, or the partners, if you look at it that way. Last year we went to Liberia, and we set up solar at a school that didn't have any electricity. Imagine sitting in a dark room without even no light at all, trying to see the blackboard as your teacher's instructing you. So tiny homes have taught us some lessons about how we connect with other communities of poor people. These new arrays now, every house has its own array. They're enough, even in Michigan, to draw, in the summer, solar enough to run the whole house for less than $20. That's your appliances, your air conditioning, your lights. In the winter, the sunlight is less, right? And the bills are slightly more because the heat runs constantly. So you're not eliminating your bill, but you're reducing it by a good $40, $50 a month, which will help them long term. So that's what we're doing. I guess we can turn on a light, we're going to have to sit in the dark. We're building tiny homes, all in one neighborhood, roughly 3 blocks, for now between 40 and 50 people who participate in a program for 7 years that will allow them to own the home, to have what most of us take for granted in the middle class, that you have a home you can use to get collateral if you need a loan from a financial institution. You have a home that you could sell if you want something else, somewhere else, something different. Most importantly for me, you have something you can leave your kids or grandkids or generation with that will be a springboard. That means not only are you ending homelessness or poverty, but you're dealing with economic mobility, which is a huge thing in this country. And that we, primarily white people, have used our homes as piggy banks, and people of color haven't had the same opportunities for generations. It is not to solve all for everything. But for 40 or 50 families, it's the solve for them. That's what happens when you give somebody a home. But yeah.
You talk about them living there 7 years and then they own it.
Yep.
Have you had any move out ahead of time and so then do the next person 7 years or the next person 5 years?
Yeah, start again. We've had one person move out and he died. He had MS and it took him. So then the next person who moved in starts 7 years again. Yeah, we want to make sure. So 7 years is about half of a traditional mortgage, which gives us a record, but it's not as long as a traditional mortgage. That poor people aren't used to thinking in blocks of 15 years, right? Really, 2 inspirations happened to cause this forecast. One was, we've been doing homeless services, ministries, however you want to call it, since the 1980s. And the staff is really good at helping people who are ready to make moves in their lives, get a job, get mental health services, get clean and sober, get an apartment, get whatever, right? But then they come back almost like a boomerang at different periods of time, but they come back. And they come back through no fault of their own. They're working the program the right way, but then something happens that they can't control usually. Their hours are cut. right? They lose their job because of a business decision. They get sick and they don't have health insurance. Their car breaks down. They don't have the money to fix it. So all of a sudden, they're spiraling back down economically. And I would say emotionally, by the time they come back, even though they've been doing good and right things with their lives, they feel much more defeated because things have conspired against them, or at least that's how they feel. And so I was trying to think of a way to help them break that cycle that was far too consistent. The other thing is my mom died and left me a house. And it dawned on me, I don't know how stupid I am, what a difference that makes. I didn't need a house, I obviously sold the house, but what a difference that would have made to me if I was poor, and how that never happens to people who are poor. People who are poor, they shake down everybody they know to try and get their mom or their dad buried or cremated because it's cheaper, right? So those two things in tandem said to me, we had to try something. And then I went to visit a couple of the tiny house villages, and I didn't like it. What they're doing is good work. It's just not what I wanted to do. What I wanted to do was deal with poverty. I was the landlord for 7 years, right?
You are, so you're having that done.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And they will make some decisions before we get to the 7-year mark. We will have to make some decisions too. Do we simply deed the title and the land and hope that it goes well forever? Do we turn it into a land trust where there's a little more organization that way? We haven't decided. Either way, there will be a community group that will decide the rules, right? Can you do an addition? Can you add a garage? Can you rent it out? Does it have to be owner-occupied? All those things impact the value of their house. And when they first moved in, they weren't thinking like that. Once you're a homeowner, you understand if the neighborhood is trashed, your house is trashed. Right? So we're about halfway through now, and we've got a couple years yet to decide. Okay.
Could you help me again with the mixed community designations that you currently utilize?
Yeah. So we have people who've been homeless, people who've been incarcerated, senior citizens, and young adults who have aged out of foster care. For these next round of houses, we've also added people with a disability. All of them make between $7,000 and $15,000 a year. So they're all poor. Now, what may happen after the 7-year mark is some of them may sell their houses to people who are middle class.
Okay.
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the economic diversity. What I'm not okay with is gentrification. So hopefully in the rules, they won't allow a developer to come in and scoop them all up and sell them. But it's theirs to decide.
Thank you.
To be honest.
I appreciate that.
I wish. Now we've done other developments where it's built right into the contract. One of our apartment buildings was a $10 million contract, and we were pretty firm in saying we want minority firms, we want city firms, we want firms that employ folks who have strikes against them. But for this one, we haven't. It's really been rough just getting it, because we're seeing the small potatoes, you know. We want to get it built. Every month it's not built, it means hiring security around the block and paying for insurance rights. So if I should secure a big foundation to do like a whole block at once, then that would open up the door for that opportunity.
Yeah.
So far, I mean, it's all been private money, so churches, little foundations, but now we're in the place where we're approaching a big Ford Foundation out of New York or a Ralph Wilson Foundation. Should we get $1 million or $2 million out of those big ones, we'll be in a different spot.
Sure. And I think, continuing, this is the final thought, which is out of contracts, when it pertains to your leasing agreements. I really like the idea that you have a financial coach and there's a private meeting that you don't have to worry about kind of the whole, their personal business, so to speak,
Right.
is shared with a group setting.
Right.
And then there's the homeowner kind of rounding them to the reality of shared but personalized
Right.
space.
Yeah.
You built all that into the leasing agreement or the rent to own, which is the coaching. This comes with the property, the meeting schedule? So is it something that is later introduced, or is it just
No.
up front that you bring it in?
Yeah, so actually, so we haven't talked about how we do vetting. We check their income, we check their criminal background. You know, we take people who have been convicted, even of murder. The only thing we don't take is somebody with a conviction for a sexual crime,
Sure.
just because we have homeless kids all over our campus. Housing history, it's okay if you've lived a couple places, you know, why have you moved, have you ever been evicted, that kind of stuff. You have a couple references. And then, once they're ranked that way, they're brought in for an interview, but the interview is made up of people living in the tiny homes already. So they get a voice, right? It's their community. And at the very end of that, we explain the program again. We go over the fact that you're going to live in a fishbowl, that if you can't live with people taking pictures of your house, this probably isn't the right. They don't have the right to come in your house.
Sure.
You have the right to privacy, but you can't yell at them on the sidewalk to get the blankety blank off.
Right.
So, and they sign that they understand it's a program. It's not just a rental agreement, it's a program that you're saying yes to.
Thank you. In the presentation that you have here, are you willing to share that?
I really don't give that away. For one thing, I'm always updating it,
Sure.
but if you win the book, it's got all the information in it.
All right, and I hope to win.
All right.
This has been a presentation by Reverend Faith Fowler. She's the pastor of Cass Community United Methodist Church in Detroit, Michigan. She's executive director of Cass Community Social Services, a nonprofit agency that provides food, housing, and mental health and employment programs for people living in areas of concerted poverty. In addition to her work at Cass, Reverend Fowler has served as a board member of the Cass Corridor Neighborhood Development Corporation. She is also author of This Far by Faith, 20 Years at Cass Community, and another book, Tiny Homes in a Big City. Reverend Fowler has lived in Detroit for the last 30 years, and she continues to live and participate with people residing on the Cass campus and in the Tiny Homes community.